Hey guys, so I just want to show you guys what would happen if people sort of installed Debian in such a way that it was sort of the defaults that you'd gone through in the install, and yet you still wanted to use Timeshift and all of that sort of thing. So essentially, we want to obviously be in a position where if someone obviously makes a mistake, or if you've sort of configured your system incorrectly, we don't want to always have to be reinstalling from scratch, right? That makes no sense in sort of how Linux works, because remember, like the way Linux is functional, everything is just a file, right? So if you have a bunch of files on your computer and one is configured incorrectly, or one has the wrong text in it, you don't just typically reinstall your entire computer to correct that issue. You just edit the file, right, and change the text inside that file, and then it would be correct going from there. So we kind of want to get away from, I think it's like a hangover from where people have sort of used Windows before, and then sort of upgraded their operating system, and because Windows isn't just files, it has sort of a registry component, and all sorts of things like that. Often, or typically, you might sort of do like a clean install or a reinstall if things are not working 100%. It really doesn't work the same like that under Linux at all. The sort of the worst that can happen if you sort of haven't kept your system sort of clean and configured nicely, is you just end up with files you don't need, right? That are config files that perhaps aren't being read because you don't have the package installed anymore that would read that configuration file and make use of it. But you don't sort of end up in a situation where you're needing to typically reinstall the entire operating system if things aren't working. You should always be able to sort of edit a file, correct something, and put it back to how it should be. And so I basically want to show you that, and we're going to imagine two scenarios. One where someone sort of run the Debian installer and just sort of done the default everything. And you'll end up with sort of an ext4 partition, and sort of your partition's not sort of perhaps aligned as you like them. And then a sort of a second scenario where perhaps someone was slightly had sort of a little bit more knowledge, but didn't quite know all the ins and outs, and so they've sort of done the install sort of default, and then they have modified their partition layout slightly, but they haven't sort of got their subvolumes correct. So I'll show you what that looks like. So let's basically fire up two virtual machines here, and I'll show you sort of the what could be typical for two different types of users to do basically. So I'm just going to make sort of a disk image here. So let's call this one Debian BTR, actually ext, okay, right. And we'll make it 40 gigs. So we'll make the machines very similar, and then we'll basically look at the different sort of scenarios that could have played out basically, and then look at how would we fix that basically. So let's do that. So I'm just going to add some networking to sort of each of the machines here. So let's do that, and I'm just going to copy my adapter name. Just so I can put that in here. Okay. So I'm just going to add that so we get the correct boot. Sorry, got some sort of notification here. Let's just close that. Okay, so let's take a look. Is that opened? Opened over here. Okay, so we're going to start installing that one, and then we're going to come to the other scenario as well. So I'm just going to create a machine for the sort of second scenario that we could end up in. Yeah, you don't need to watch all this. This is just sort of a standard sort of making an sort of virtual machine, but you can skip this if you don't want to actually see the sort of defaults that I'm doing into the video. I'll show you the sort of partition layout that sort of results in or what could result from the choices that are made, basically. So let me just do this, and this one's going to be BTRFS. And we're going to obviously set the machine up very similarly, but just with a different set of choices in the setup. So okay, got that. Okay, so let's get these machines up and running. So okay, so this screen's a little large. I'm just going to resize these things, just so they're not taking up all that space. Okay. Okay, so you'd obviously just choose the default. So we're just going to choose all sort of defaults here, right up until we get to the partition layout, and that's where the two machines will deviate. And so obviously the overall goal here is that users are wanting to obviously set up Timeshift and have sort of automatic snapshots, so if they sort of break the system, they have something to roll back on. And that's not going to typically work if you sort of have sort of an out-the-box installation, right? So let's give this one a name. This was the ext option. And we'll just, okay, we'll also do the option where users didn't read this and they ended up setting a password. Because basically, that's also, in my opinion, not recommended. You should definitely not be setting a root password, but people are still sort of doing that sort of for either not understanding, or obviously if you have sort of legacy applications. We'll call this user, we'll just call it my name, right? Okay, so we'll also do that. We'll get into that situation, and then this one was BTRFS. And same sort of thing. Okay. Okay, so here's where the sort of setup might deviate at this point. So essentially, you've either got someone who's like very new, so maybe they either just moved over from Windows, or have never really sort of maybe they're like an Ubuntu user who's used to sort of going through the GUI and just accepting sort of the defaults. So we'll just sort of set it up exactly in that way. And then obviously on the screen, sort of a new user would probably choose this option because it basically says it's recommended for new users. So we're just going to end up with that, and we'll take a look at the two different layouts that we get. This one, again, we might have someone who's who either does this manually and chooses what he thinks is logical, or does this and then edits it afterwards. So he might do something like this, choose sort of one partition, or he might have two. It doesn't really matter. And then he might end up in a situation where he sees this layout and thinks, actually, I do want to use Timeshift and all of that sort of stuff, and I don't like this layout that's been chosen for me. And so he might go in here and he might sort of start editing some of the stuff. He might say, actually, you know what, he doesn't like the sort of the size of this, or the fact that it's ext4, so he might sort of do something like this. He might change this slightly. So he might, that's probably fine. He might either resize that or leave it that size. But he'd probably come in here and then take off 8 gigs from that, so that's going to be like 46 or something, just so he's got a different size swap. So we're just going to imagine, 36. We don't need to get this exactly right, but he would then change this, say, for example. Okay, I didn't really make that the correct size, did I? Okay, we'll just pretend I'd sort of resize this correctly. I didn't really pay enough attention. Let's just say he makes this sort of a swap partition, and then does that. So I'm not too worried about the exact sizes here. This is just a virtual machine. and obviously it's just for sort of a demonstration purpose. But we basically might end up in a situation where we have two slightly different layout options, depending on sort of the knowledge of the user. Although both of them are going to end up incorrect. Basically, you will either, in both of these situations, the Timeshift will not be usable out of the box, basically. So we're going to go with this, and then have a look and see, what is the actual issue when we've installed this. So I'm now going to just the rest of this is sort of just accepting the defaults, right? So yeah, that's all good. Okay, this is all good. So we're going to just accept this. Did I not say yes to that? Okay, and yes to that. Okay, so we're going to wait for this to install. I'll pause the video here, and then we'll take a little look sort of once we're inside the VM. I might unpause just to show you the sort of last, sort of questions, but I'll definitely be choosing all the sort of default stuff from now on. And we should end up with a very default setup, basically, a very default installation. Barring these sort of small changes that we've made here. So let me pause here, and I'll come back to you sort of when this is done. Okay, so this one has finished installing here, so we're just going to sort of accept the default option here and then run through it. We'll get some more sort of defaults and sort of updating and installing. And so I'll pause it again just now. The other thing I was just going to say is this obviously isn't something that I've done a lot of. This sort of normally when I install it's installed sort of correctly from the offset. And so if I get sort of stuck halfway through and need to pause and take a little look and see what's going on, because I can't figure out how to actually do something, I obviously just apologize for that, but that's just, that's the next right. We're all here trying to figure this stuff out. So I'm going to obviously give this a go, sort of converting these installations over for Timeshift to work, but don't expect sort of miracles and every command to sort of be typed right out of the box correctly. It's just not something that I would typically do every day. So it's more about sort of learning and understanding how sort of to tackle this sort of problem. That's sort of more of the intention here. And if when things go wrong, what do you do basically? And I might also add in sort of some scenario where your installation no longer boots once you've made some changes. Just so you can see how we'd tackle that as well. And I do, obviously I've Googled a little bit of stuff. I have some sort of commands, if I have a look here, that I kind of, for example, have looked up on the Debian wiki, this BTRF migration page, and taken a look at what they are suggesting that you do. I have to say, I don't actually agree with what they're suggesting. I don't like what they have come up with, although I'm sure it obviously works. It just doesn't look very neat. I kind of, in my preference, is to have everything sort of very neat and tidy, and so this what they've suggested here does not leave it in a sort of state that I would consider to be super tidy. So I'm just going to probably ignore a lot of what they've done. Like I was saying, I haven't done this before, but I obviously have an idea of how to tackle this. I also wrote down some sort of instructions, because some of the stuff I can't remember it, or, by rote, I can't remember it off by heart. And so some of the commands I've had to just sort of write down. There's sort of a cheat sheet here. And I'll show you that when we, if in one of the situations I want to show you, like as I said, was when the system doesn't boot, like what do we do, right? How do we repair our Linux installation if we can't even get into it? And so I definitely want to show you how I would tackle that. It'll be obviously sort of a contrived scenario, but definitely one that you can get into. I do think also this particular machine here will be slightly easier to complete because it's we're not having to go through a file system change like we are on this one, and so we don't need to convert from one file system to another, and that's going to make this a whole lot easier. So I might start on this one where you already have started with a BTRFS file system. and you're wanting to sort of just change your subvolumes and get it all correct for Timeshift. And then I might then, having seen how this panned out, it should then give us more sort of experience to then tackle sort of a harder sort of problem, which is sort of converting, and that will change things like your UUID of your partitions, which will render the system unbootable, basically, if we don't then make changes that we're going to need to make to the grub menu and sort of stuff like that. So I do want to make these two sort of differences clear, and basically what to do if you end up in those sort of situations. So yeah, I'm going to just pause here, and then we'll take a look at these scenarios and hopefully be able to figure it out. Okay, so this is just finishing up the install here. I mean, I don't use normally the graphical install, but I think this is sort of the last sort of step. And so what I'm going to show you, is basically just sort of my first steps after booting into this VM, and then I'll obviously just emulate what I've done on the other one as well, but I'll just show it to you on just the one, and then sort of pause and come back. So let's just do that, and then this should boot up fairly quickly. Let's take a look. Yeah, okay, so we're just going to get in. Okay, so we'll just wait for it to boot up. I just got a call. Just give me 1 second while this boots. I'll come back now. Okay, so sorry about that. So let's just log in here. Okie dokie. Okay, so this is a little higher resolution there. Okay, let's give it a moment to get into here. Okay, so the first things we're going to do is very basic. We're just obviously enable sort of sudo privileges for the account, because that was forgotten during the installation. And then we're going to install a couple of packages and then sort of compare the two sort of layouts on the machine, and then come up with a strategy of what to do, basically. So first thing, obviously this is not going to work. Okay, so if we go here, there you go, it's basically saying you can't. So the way to run that is obviously just to log in as root. If I can type the password right, yeah, and then we're going to just sort of add my account Peter to the sudo group, right? Okay, and then we just need to reboot. I think you can just log out and log in, but I'm just going to reboot because it's quicker. Let's see what happens, basically, and then that should basically fix that up. And then there's a couple of packages I want to put on, and I'll show you that as well really quickly, and then I'll get the other one into the identical sort of position as what I've done here. So let's do that. Okay, so it's obviously running a little slowly with both of them. They're both running on the same disk, so things are going to be a little slow while we do that. And terminal. Okay. Okay, so the packages you're probably going to want, at least if you're running in a VM, is I think it's one of these ones. Is it guest agent, I think? And then you also want these files. This is just if it's a sort of a VM, then you can sort of install these guest editions. And I also want to get gparted. Just get all those packages. Okay, so what did it had something already? The guest agent. Okay, so by default it already installed that. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so we got the packages we need. And I'm going to do basically what I've just done here. I'm going to duplicate that over here when this is finished installing, and then we'll compare sort of the layouts that we have, and this one I think is definitely going to be easier, so we're going to do this one first. But let me pause and come back to you in a few moments. Okay, so we're back here. I've kind of done everything. So if I take a look, these are our two layouts. So this one is definitely in a better position than this here, because it's got slightly, I guess if you imagine this was resized how the person wanted it, and it's also in the correct file system. Whereas this one's not. It's in no position really to sort of continue. So if we look at this one first, even in the state that it is now, obviously Timeshift would sort of not work out of the box. I can show you that. So let's do that. Okay. And it's not going to work because the subvolume's incorrect. So I just want to show you what happens. Okay. So it's going to say, what are we going to do here? And we're going to get stuck, I think. Yeah. See, it doesn't actually know what to do here, so it's stuck, basically. So this is the problem we wanting to correct. So let's take a look at what is happening here. Why is it saying this? Can I escape out of this? Okay, so if we type in the command to list our subvolumes, which is this, BTRFS subvol, or subvolume if you want to type it out fully, and then a period at the end. We see that we do have a subvolume, but it's named incorrectly, right? It's got sort of at root fs, whereas Timeshift expects it to be sort of at. It also, there's no at home. So the Timeshift program does sort of expect some conformity here. And this is an issue. And we obviously want to sort of correct this in a neat way. So in other words, to do it correctly from scratch, how it should have been done from the start, rather than sort of, creating symlinks and all of that sort of thing, which is, in my opinion, a non-neat way of doing things, and sort of puts your system in a state where you need to sort of have some insider knowledge as to what's happening. Whereas if everything's sort of clean and default how it should be, then anyone can sort of administer and take a look. So I've got some commands here which I sort of wrote out. And what I want to do, basically, and sort of taking a look at this. One thing that I do think we need to know and take note of and write down, if you haven't, is obviously the path of your disks. And you can obviously just get that through parted here while the system is booted, or some other way. But if we take a look at my system, it's installed, obviously my root's installed on /dev/vda2. And yours might definitely be different, especially if it's not a VM. So it might be something like dev nvme0, and then obviously a partition number, or something to that effect. And so these values you basically want to write down. So I've just written them down here on a piece of paper. But it's just information you're going to want to have, because we're going to make use of this information later on. So obviously write down your root path. Just so we have it, and if I close that, so let's see, so what are we going to do to resolve this situation? Well, let's take a look, basically. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a subvolume. Yeah, that's my first strategy. So my first strategy is to sort of do one subvolume at a time. And then sort of reboot and make sure everything is. Actually, let's start actually with a different strategy. Let's start by sort of making. Yeah, we'll do our subvolume first. Actually, it should be fine. So BTRFS. So we're going to create our subvolume here, and then we're going to list it, right? So okay, that's totally wrong. Okay, so let's just fix that. So we're going to just delete what I just did, because I sort of created it in the wrong place. So you can see I want it to basically be level 5, and I just created this one in the wrong place. So we're going to do that. and sort of go back to the root, and then do the same sort of thing, and sort of create it in the correct place. Okay. That's still wrong, I'm sure. Okay. Okay, so I need to just basically create this in the correct place. So I think I might have to do something like that. What do I do? Just going to take a quick look. Okay, so I'm having some issues here, so I just want to fix this. Okay, I think I know why it's doing that. And the way around it, okay, I know what I need to do. Okay, so basically, because I'm in the incorrect path, and I'm not where sort of the disk is mounted, I'm sort of mounted underneath the other subvolume, right? So I'm sort of nested underneath the initial subvolume. So we need to correct that basically. So and again, I mean, I don't do this all the time. So I mean, if you are sort of experienced at this, you probably are not going to make the same mistake as me. But this is why we do this, right? So we can figure out in real time. Sort of, I can see an issue, and then I'm trying to obviously correct the issue at the same time, right? And it might actually be easier to get it from disks. You can also use the mount command. So you could go, let me show you a couple of ways you could get the information I'm now searching for. You could type mount, and you can read it out of here, basically. So if I was to say, search just for, oh, that's not going to work, /. VDA2. Okay, so we can get it basically on here, so we can see where our mounts are. And then the other place we can get it is here. So if I want to have a look at this, we can see here that this is the device. Okay, so I'm not sure, I might have to remount this so in another location. So let's have a look here. If I was to go like this may not work. Yeah, so let's go like this. So we're gonna remount this disk in a slightly different place, and the way to do this is we're gonna make a directory to mount it to, and I'm just gonna call it temp, and then I'm gonna mount VDA2 to this location. And there may be a better way of doing this, but this is how I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to change my directory to this location, and then you'll see we actually have access to view the root FS. Yeah, so this is the difference here. So just to make this clear, if I was to open up here and I was to go to my root, which would be typically how you would see all your files, you can see that I'm not seeing my subvolume first, basically. Whereas here I've mounted the actual file system to a new location just so that I can see, and then if I was to actually go into rootfs, I can then see underneath here the same files that we see if we had just sort of accessed root directly. And why do I need to make that distinction? Because I mean, I make my subvolume, I want a subvolume right next to it, right? So I need to be able to create my subvolume here, which will be this command. Sorry for just going all the way back up. And if I then type out the command again, if we then take a look here, let's take a look at what's happened. We've now got two sort of a more flat structure, two subvolumes in the same sort of path depth, instead of this one being sort of nested underneath, which is what was happening before. And if I do an ls, we can see basically my two sets of directories, right, or my two subvolumes. So what do I want to do now? I want to move all the files from here, and I want to move them into there. So this is going to be tricky to do because I can't actually do this while I'm booted into the system. So what I need to do is I need to reboot into on a live CD, and then manipulate the files, moving them all from here into here, basically. So I'm going to do that now. There's one other thing I want to do, and that's I want to make any changes that I'm going to make to my file system FS table now, or Fstab now. But I want to sort that out at this point so that I'm not sort of compounding issues if I make a mistake here. So if I go over here, let's just go here and just have a look at my Fstab. This is just on a working system, so I can basically grab all of the sort of mount options that one might actually use. I'm going to do that now, so I'm going to basically copy that, and I'm going to fix up my Fstab on the system before sort of making too many changes, just so that everything's sort of getting super neat, and I'm not basically breaking it and then wondering what to do, right? So let's do that. I'll do it and get it just so it's a little easier for you to read. Okay, so let's take a look here. What do I need to do? I need to just, yeah, so these defaults I don't really like, so we're going to add in a whole lot of extra stuff. Whoops. Oh, you can't copy and paste, can you? Okay, so if I go, what did I want? I wanted compress. Okay, so you would obviously pick up whatever sort of stuff you wanted to put in. I'm doing this, basically. And you may not obviously use or agree with all of the different options that I'm using. That's totally fine. And space cache. So let's just review what I've done here. But defaults, compressed, auto defrag, SSD space cache, and then this will change later on. And we don't have a home at this point. Okay, so let's save this. Just want to check I can restart at this stage and that everything's still booting, because sometimes if you sort of make changes here, I mean, I'm obviously know this is definitely going to work, but if you were not confident in this sort of thing and made some changes, if this rendered this unbootable, you'd want to repair it at this stage. I'm just basically doing it as a matter of course, just so that I'm not troubleshooting multiple issues at the same time from doing too many changes and then not knowing sort of which change has sort of broken my system. It kind of makes the troubleshooting process a lot longer, so I'm just going to basically avoid that. So, okay, so this system still boots. So now what I want to do is I want to move all my files out of the old subvolume and into the new one I just created, right? So we're going to just use a live CD to do that. And you can use any live CD. I'm just going to make use of Ubuntu's option. It works totally great. It's got a whole lot of tools built straight onto the CD that we can use. So I'm going to definitely do that. And just change the boot order quickly. Boot options, that's what I want. Okay, so let's just boot this up off that CD. Okay, so I'll probably just, once it's booted, I'll probably just, yeah, I'll probably just say try Ubuntu. I think that's how it works on this live CD. And then be able to manipulate the file system with it, obviously without being booted into it, which is great. Essentially, that's what we want to do. So is this booting up? Okay, it's just a little slow, so we just give it a little bit of time here. You guys are still there? Okay. Okay, here we go. So... okay, sure, you're allowed Ubuntu. Okay, so let's just try that. Okay, here we go. So we'll take a look at what has happened so far. It's really not much. So you should be following along pretty easily, even if you've never done this before. And the great thing about this is we can just use sort of the disks utility. It's very, very easy to use, and sort of rather than having to mount all these things manually from the command line. And we can see, okay, so I've gone to my disk and we see the same thing here, dev VDA2, so it hasn't changed the order of our disks. And it's not mounted, right? So you can just hit the play button and it mounts it for you to a location, which is very useful. And what we're going to do is we are going to change to that location just via copy and paste. Yeah, and this is perfect. So what I want to do now is do an ls, and we see we have, okay, perfect. We have our two subvolumes, and I can just list them again. Perfect. Okay, so now what we want to do is we just want to move all of the files from this subvolume into this volume. So this is really straightforward. We can actually use the mv command. It actually ignores, we can just do this, sudo mv, and then we can say at root fs star. And where do we want to move them to? At, basically. Okay, so let's see, is that going to work? Okay, and we can actually open up files, I think, and just take a look and see if they're moving. Oh, it would be this one, this volume, and then if we go to root at, so files are moving into there and out of here, I'm presuming they are disappearing. Yeah, it looks like they are. This command's still running, so we should see these direct, yeah, they just disappear, right? There we go. Okay, perfect. So basically all of the files were moved from one location to another. That's exactly what we wanted. So from this subvolume, they've been moved into the subvolume we recently created. And now we just want to delete that subvolume. So we're going to delete it. And we're going to type that and then list the subvolumes. And we only have one subvolume, right? And if we look in our files application, did I close it? We should find there's only one subvolume, which indeed there is. Okay, so we're not actually completed now. We're not done. We still have to make a /home. So the way to do that is to create the next subvolume. So create at home. Okay, and if we have a look here now, we should see we have our at home, and obviously what we need to do is we need to move what's under the contents of this directory. You may have many folders, but I just have one because it's kind of just with just my test VM. We only made one user, and we want to move what's under there into here. So we're going to do the same sort of thing. This will be very quick because there are no files in there, but if you had a large home directory, this would obviously take a long time. So we're going to do that, and we're going to move it to at home, right? And we're going to not forget to put in the mv command. Okay, so if we look now, we should see that under here we have our users that have moved, and if we go in here, this will be empty. So to clean this up, we obviously want to remove this directory. We don't need to leave that there, so we can just go sudo rm and just delete that basically, and we could just do /r in case there was anything left behind. I don't think there is. And so now we're actually in a very good position here, because we actually have created everything that we need. Basically, we have our partitions sort of laid out correctly, so the person who installed this knew enough to at least sort of make logical decisions on their partitions and select BTRFS. And then we also have at this stage the subvolumes correct, but there's still one issue that we need to correct, because this system will not boot if we were to restart at this stage. And the reason for that, it should be pretty straightforward, is if we're going to basically look at our grub console. So what we're going to do, okay, so you wouldn't normally, okay, so what I'll do is I'll show you how to do this way. So, okay, so let's actually mount our boot volume. So this was where it's booting from, right? So let's plus that and take a look here. So what I want to show you essentially is if we change this directory and have a little look at it. Okay, so basically I want to show you what is going to happen under this grub config file here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what is it doing basically? It's going to search this disk, this UUID, and this should match. Yeah, 6E ending in A0. 6E A0, yeah. And it's basically going to then search what underneath there, /@rootfs. Okay, but we know that's not right. Okay, so we can't allow this to not be modified. We can't allow this file to try to search a location that we've just deleted. So what we need to do is we need to edit that file, right? So let's do that, and we're going to take out the subvolume that we had obviously had previously, and leave in what we have created, which is just the @ right? Okay, so that's the first change we need to make. But there's still another change actually. This is still not going to boot at this stage. So what else do we need to do? Okay, so if I go in here, what do I have? Okay, we actually can't easily edit it from here. So what I'm going to do is, at this point, this is configured enough. Maybe I'll show you how to do this. Let me just pause. I just need to take a little look how to access some files here on this boot partition, and then when I figure it out, I'll come back to you, because I just don't want to sort of waste your time, but I want to edit another file that's not being listed here. So just give me a second. Okay, so I located the other directory I want to edit, basically. So let me start again and get back into there so I can show you sort of how to do that. So the other file that I'm wanting to edit is actually the menu that's actually displayed when you sort of first boot the system and you see the grub menu. And I need to edit that because that obviously is still going to be referencing information in that file that's incorrect, right? So it was over here. I changed to this disk. It's stored under sort of your root. And if we go into there and then /boot, I think it is. Yeah, and then it's grub. Okay, and then what was it? It was grub.cfg. Okay, so if we go edit this file, typically you would not edit this file by hand, just so you know. So normally you would use update grub to edit this file. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to edit this file by hand just to show you sort of how to do that. And we can actually see, if we sort of scroll down, the actual menu entries, basically. So let's take a look. So that will be menu entry. So we'll see these lines that say menu entry and then display sort of the actual information that we're used to. So if we take a look at your submenu, this is actually what I think is run. We see that actually in this menu it's actually still referenced, right? The /rootfs. Now that's obviously an issue. So we can do one of two things. Either we can edit this file by hand at this stage, and then boot, and the menu will be correct. Or we can edit this file during the grub boot, and then sort of you press sort of E on the entry, and then you sort of make your edits, and then press F10, and then you can then do an update grub, and this will be regenerated correctly after the fact. So what I'll do is I'll do it this way through the file on this particular one, and then on here we'll sort of, that contrived scenario we was talking about before, we'll forget to do this, say, and end up with a system that doesn't actually boot, and we actually will have no way of knowing what to put in here to actually make our edits, because we'll sort of change this disk's UUID and have no real way of getting that information back easily. So what we'll do is this way, we'll edit this file by hand, and then on this scenario we'll see what we do if we've forgotten to do that, basically. So let's just go down to this. I can read the kernel. This is the later kernel, this 5.10.0-13. So I'm going to basically go here and edit this. I'm editing the submenu, right? So we're not editing the initial menu entry, but that's sort of what's displayed. And I believe this is what's actually going to run. So let's make our edits here. So I've taken that one out, and it looks like there's another one here I need to take out. and the third entry here. Okay, so there's 3 little changes I've made. And I haven't edited the other one, basically. So we had 4 entries in our list, and I've edited the one of the entries. So let's see what happens if we were to restart now. So to do that, we're just going to turn this off. And I believe this should actually boot, if I'm not totally incorrect. And then afterwards, we'll sort of run the command to sort of update grub and fix all of them, basically. So let's take out the CD-ROM here and press enter. And then we'll just turn on our machine again. And I'll show you what has happened here. So let's take a look at what has happened when we have edited this by hand. I can tell something has gone wrong because this shouldn't look like this, but let's take a look. So if I edit this one, okay, so we see our edits actually by hand have actually come through, and that as well. So let's just take a look all the way across. Oh, this is not big enough. Okay, so let's take a look. So what is going to happen if we try to boot this? And if we look at, say, one of the other ones, let's look at any of the other ones I didn't edit, like this one. We can see that this has still got that incorrect information. Now, you could manually edit this by hand, like obviously by doing this, and then hitting F10, and also that at the end here, and then hit F10 and it should boot. But we have edited the file manually prior to rebooting, so we don't have to do it on this particular entry. So I'm just going to press enter and see if this actually works at this stage. It may not, basically. I'm not 100% sure. Actually, it looks as though I did do enough, correct, so we have booted. Okay, so this is perfect. So basically, I'll show you again. So what would happen if we hadn't edited that file? I'll show you here, basically. So it's pretty, just so you guys are fully clear of what is going on, basically. Let's say we didn't, I edited this entry, but let's say I hadn't. I'm going to boot one of these older entries. And you can see it can't do it. It doesn't know how to locate this file. It's telling me, basically, that file does not exist there. So what do you do, basically? Well, we can just edit it right here, basically. Just go in, take out, obviously, the appropriate locations. We know that we've changed this, so we know exactly what to change. And then it tells you here, when you are finished editing here, you just put F10, and we're going to do that. And it should now boot, basically, because I've made the same edits, but just not by hand on the file. Perfect. So now what, though? What if we want this to be updated for us? Well, obviously we can run a command to actually do these sort of updates for us. We don't actually have to do them by hand once we sort of booted. And the command is this here. So I wrote it down. I pulled this off, actually, the Ubuntu wiki. So let's just take a look. It was grub mkconfig. Am I putting this incorrect? Just want to be able to use tab completion grub. Okay. Grub mkconfig. Sorry, I just completely cancelled that command because otherwise it doesn't write it out to the file. / grub. So basically, if you don't obviously put your output to a file, then it just prints it on the screen. And it's going to do that. So now, what has happened here? So essentially what has happened is this has updated this file for me with the appropriate edits. So we can actually check that. So let's take a look. Let's just open and get it. It's a little bit easier. And it would be boot, right? And then grub, and then grub.conf. Okay, so let's take a look. So essentially the first one would have been modified. Yeah, so there's the edits are starting to, I'm starting to see them here. Excuse me. So basically, yeah, all of the edits have basically done automatically for me now by the grub generating the file in all the appropriate locations. So that's excellent. So essentially at this point, I think we've solved this problem. Basically, this machine started with a BTRFS file system, but not the correct subvolumes. And I'm just going to double check I haven't forgotten anything on my notes. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good here. I've written down all of the things that I would want to have done and checked, and we've checked them basically. So what does that mean? So that means obviously if we run Timeshift now, it should work basically. And it was -gtk. So now if we go settings, we can basically choose our disk. Perfect. Our schedule, let's say we wanted a weekly schedule or something, you could set that appropriately. We're going to include home, and we're going to hit OK. So now does it work basically? No. That's strange. So let's take a look. What did we do wrong? So this should have worked in my opinion, but something has not worked. So we've got our path. And we've got, it could be because it could be because I booted an old kernel here and I didn't like that. It's got a strange path here. Just gonna delete it. Okay, so this is good why we do this, right? So if we get errors, we obviously, you're seeing in real time sort of things that could crop up. So we're gonna just have a look. And I'm just gonna try and fix them sort of in real time just to make sure that everything is working. And I'm just gonna boot the system normally this time around. So we've done sort of updated our grub and everything, and we should boot normally now. So let's see what happens. Okay, so what does happen? Let's take a look. Okay. Let's have a look what does happen here. So I've got my settings, location, yeah, schedule. Okay, so I feel like everything is good here, but it's still not happy. The system partition has an unsupported subvolume layout, but I don't think that's true. Let's take a look and see if that's the case. Keeps doing that. Plus. That's strange. In my opinion, this is correct. I might just reinstall Timeshift, yeah. So I think something has gone wrong with it. So I'm a little confused here, so as to why this is not working. But that's why we do this, right? So we can figure this out. So to me, those subvolumes look correct. So let's figure out what has happened here. Okay, so sorry guys, I actually paused there because I got a little confused, and I now realize what I've done wrong. So it's nothing major. So basically, I got confused. I thought this was being created by Timeshift when I opened it, but actually that's not what's happening. So, some of you would have noticed my obvious issue or obvious error that I've forgotten to do, and that's basically when I'm logging in, it's creating this subvolume here as a sort of temporary profile. The reason is I forgot basically to edit my Fstab after creating and moving my home directory into this subvolume. So why does it do this? Well, let's take a look. So if we edit our Fstab, I shall show you. And definitely, sort of, if those of you a little bit more experienced will have noticed this. And we're still all learning, so it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. That's totally fine. We don't need to gatekeep or anything like that. But basically, what I need to do is mount my home directory, and that's wrong as well. Okay, so all of this Fstab was not modified. Basically, is the answer here. So we want to basically do that. So I had obviously forgotten to do this after basically telling you what I needed to do. I then forgot to go and actually do it. So essentially, just when we go back in the video, and I'll do it again for this one, I will obviously edit this at the appropriate time, basically. But I'm now editing this after the fact because basically I've made a mistake. So you've just seen what I've done here. I've basically just gone to this line and corrected this. It was still set to the subvolume being at rootfs, and I've added another line. I just copied and pasted that one, and then changed that to /home because that's what I want to mount, and given it the subvolume to mount here. So essentially now, if we then delete this subvolume and reboot, we should no longer get an error. And I haven't tested it, but I'm fairly confident that's what I did wrong. So now let's reboot. So it's okay if you make mistakes. I mean, this is the whole point of the video, right? Is to sort of give you sort of the steps and the ability to troubleshoot, when things go wrong, rather than sort of just the outright answer. Sort of more the goal here, because your system may not be identical, especially not to a virtual machine, and you definitely want to have sort of a more general overview of what's happening here than sort of just copying and pasting commands, which is definitely not the position you want to be in. So okay, so we've got two subvolumes now. So I'm pretty sure now, if I do that and just take a little look at it, yeah, it works. Okay, so yeah, and I mean I did run it from the command line before, GTA, but it makes no difference. Yeah, it basically works perfectly. So yeah, I'd basically forgotten to come in and correct my Fstab. Basically, that's the answer. So you basically just want to have done that. That's basically my fault. Sort of obviously in trying to sort of demonstrate this at the same time as remember everything. At the point where I was basically going over, did I do everything earlier in the video, and I was looking at this page, checking if I'd done all of the steps. One of the steps is editing the Fstab, but I just had assumed I'd done that, basically, instead of actually having done it. It sort of must have done it in my head. And so this is basically the two edits that I've made, is these two lines, right? So you want to basically just come in and fix that. If you followed the video and didn't sort of skip ahead, so you should really have watched the video and made sure you knew what was going on. Hopefully you didn't just copy and paste blindly, but if you have, you can just correct in the same way I've corrected it at this stage. And now, this machine is actually completed, it's actually finished. So let's take a look. So if I take a look at the files, I should be able to sort of browse my snapshots, which I can. And I've got my home, and I can obviously copy out files here if I sort of needed to retrieve some files. And also you could do a restore, and you can either tick or untick restoring the home/home, which is great. So that's it. So this machine is definitely completed. We've basically taken a machine that had the incorrect subvolume layouts and corrected them, and brought it back in line with sort of how it should be, and everything should be super neat and super compliant, basically. So if we just list them one more time, yeah, we can see all our subvolumes. These are the backups, and we can see here these ones are perfect, essentially. Yeah, and so that's pretty much it. Just going to have one last little look at this. Yeah, perfect. Okay, and you see our mark points have changed now, so we've got that, our home, and then obviously the Timeshift where it puts its backups. This is looking pretty good, basically. So at this stage, everything is essentially how it would be had you installed it like this from scratch, following the instructions to install it. So I'm going to pause here, and then I'm going to get logged into this machine, and then we're going to do sort of the same thing, but this machine will be more difficult to repair, or I should say just to get to this point. And so that'll be interesting to see what happens. So this was interesting. It shows you if we're sort of, if I forget things or make mistakes, you saw what occurred, and so this is great. It's a good demonstration, basically, of when things go wrong. And we're going to do the same thing here, and we're going to have that sort of contrived scenario where it doesn't boot, and see where we get. So let me pause, take a little break, and then we'll come and try and tackle the second scenario where we've got a whole new file system to convert to, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'll be back in a few moments. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit more interesting and more in depth. So the first one sort of was the sort of easier machine, and despite my mistake, we still got through it. This one, I'm not 100% sure how this is going to go, because we've actually got quite a lot to do here. So if we review sort of before we begin sort of the same sort of information, we need to know the sort of /dev/VDA, that's our disk that we're going to be manipulating. And so I've written that down. We didn't end up using that in the last one. I thought we might do, but it turned out a little bit easier than I thought. Here we're going to basically want to redo what has been done here, basically. We want to repartition this sort of in a more appropriate way. Convert this over to the BTRFS file system, and then redo all of the stuff that we've done in the other machine. So it's going to be essentially the end part might be similar, but we've definitely got a lot more work to do to sort of get to that point. So how are we going to tackle this? Okay, so first of all, I have got up a guide here, obviously just from the Debian wiki. Personally, I don't think it's a very good guide. It has a whole lot of steps that I don't agree with, so I'm probably just going to completely ignore it. I think they've also forgotten to do some steps in this guide. Nothing major that would cause an issue, but I think that there are a certain case where they've not thought about a scenario where which is what we're going to have a look at here. So the guide's pretty good, but just not how I like it, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. So let's take a look here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just abandon trying to do anything whatsoever inside of this machine. I'm just going to immediately boot to a live CD and do everything essentially from there, because I'm going to be manipulating too much to actually do that anything at all, really. So let's put in our live CD. I'm just going to boot up Ubuntu again. And last time this was super loud for me, so I'm just going to take my headphones off as this boots. But let's change the boot order first and get it going. Okay, so let's see what happens here. And okay, so this is booting perfect. You can see we're in UEFI mode, which we always want to be in. So let's have a look. So just bear with me a second. Okay, so just bypass that super annoying sound, but we're going to get in here and we're going to now have a live CD with a whole lot of tools on that is going to let us basically work with with what we need to do. Basically, we have our goal and we need to somehow achieve it. So again, I mean, if I forget things and I need to pause and just take a look, obviously, just to go over this again, we're all learning here, so it's no judgment, right? Let's take a look at our, okay, that's our disk, and I want the disk utility. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay, so we have our disks here. Okay, and that's mounted. I don't want that mounted, actually. Is that because I opened this? Yeah, I guess it is. So basically make sure you don't have any of the disks mounted. We're just going to stop all of our disks that are mounted so that we can now manipulate them. And then we're going to open up gparted and essentially redo what we want. So if I was like a normal user, and definitely, I mean, I'd probably do this anyway, and I wanted to resize these partitions, the first thing I do is before converting this, I'd probably just delete the partition here, for example, and then resize this one. So we're going to do a resize. Maybe I'll say 36 gigabytes or something. So let's just get a calculator up here. So 36864. So maybe something like this, right? Okay, that would be actually too small. Let's say you wanted a slightly larger. Let's just make it 30. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you'd just size this appropriately, right, for your system. 30720. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so let's do the resize first of all. It'll probably take longer if you have a larger disk, almost certainly, that's for sure. But we have a very small disk, so it's going to be super quick. And then we're going to just make our swap partition. So you'd end up in some sort of situation like this, basically. Oh, it's kind of got stuck. I just have to wait for my virtual machine to unstick itself. What happened? Oh, maybe I just had clicked off something by mistake. What do I want? Linux swap, that's what I want. Okay, so let's apply that. So you're probably going to end up with some sort of situation similar to this, where you have your sort of boot. You might have your root partition here, and then you might have, say, another partition where you were storing a whole lot of data, and then your swap partition. You might either put that at the end or at the beginning. If you had sort of a spinning drive, you might want to put this at the beginning. On a SSD, it really makes no difference. You can put it at the end. Wherever's convenient is totally fine. You could resize this better. I'm just going to leave it like this for the purposes of this demonstration, because it looks pretty neat how it's done it in this way. And so now what are we going to do? So basically, if I look at the instructions that Debian provided, the first thing they're saying is run a check disk. We actually don't need to do that because we've just resized it. Every time you actually make any sort of operation at all, basically in parted here, gparted, it will run a check disk basically, or an FSCK. It'll check the disk for any issues every time you ever do that. Okay, so that would have happened when I actually did the resize. If, let's say, you didn't resize the disk for some reason and you needed to do it manually, it's very straightforward. You're basically just doing this, and then choosing the appropriate file system, and then putting in, I think it's -F, is it? And then you're going to put in the file system that you want to check. I think it's that command. Yeah, it is. Okay, so it basically just checks the disk for any issues. If you are having any sort of issues here, obviously then continuing would be bad, and you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that there's no issues whatsoever before you start any sort of operation like this. And indeed, if you were to say try to resize this and it had an issue when it was checking the disk, this would have failed. It would not have been able to complete the process. So that's excellent. And then we want to basically do, and they've got the command here is BTRFS convert. So we want to basically convert this now from ext4 to BTRFS, and essentially because I recreated this and this is going to get converted, this partition will not have a new UUID. I didn't manipulate it in any way, but these two will. And so that's going to cause us a bit of a headache, actually. And I'll show you what happens. So let's do this. Let's do that. Okay, so what is going to happen here? It's going to convert this disk. I'm not sure how long this will take. On a small disk like this, I imagine this is going to be fairly quick. So let's see. On a larger disk, this is obviously going to take a lot longer. And so you may have to be a lot more patient if you're doing this on a live system. But the steps will definitely be sort of the same as what we're doing here. So let's see what it does. It looks like it makes a backup first, especially if I read these instructions, that's what it's saying. It makes sort of a backup so you can roll back, and then sort of does the conversion. That backup will obviously take up space. And so for me, I'm going to obviously delete the backup, but if this was a live system, I would obviously leave that backup for a period of time, whatever is appropriate for your use case. And then delete it later on, right? But this is a sort of a test system, so I'm just going to delete it straight away. So let's have a look. Okay, so I need to actually mount into the system. Let's just refresh this. Okay, so it has completed the migration. And so the easiest way, as I was mentioning before, you can do this manually, but because we're in a live CD with this tool, it's very, very straightforward to sort of boot into, or to run this program disks, and then it's change directory. You can just copy and paste that basically, and then run your command, and you see, okay, so we see our subvolumes basically. So this is slightly different from the first machine that we had, because we have no subvolumes, except for obviously this conversion, which I'm going to remove. So let's delete it and then show we have none. And that one is called ext2 underscore saved, right? Okay, so we end up with no subvolumes whatsoever, right? So this situation is different from the first machine, where it had an @root_fs. So that's actually very interesting. So what do we do now? Interesting. So basically, it's going to be a little bit different because we don't have any subvolumes. So if you remember, when we were manipulating this disk on that machine, which I've turned off, I had to mount this directory like in a location like /mnt/temp. And I needed to do that because I couldn't access the root of the disk, at least when I was booted into it easily, without doing that. But here we're actually already in the root of the disk, and it's just all our files are just here, and we actually want to move them into a subvolume, right? So this is what we want to do. We want to create the subvolume, and then we want to move all our files into there. So it's a little bit different because we already add our root, right? So if we were to say list them, you can see we're already at level 5 for the root here. So how do we move them? It's like super basic. It's the same thing. It's going to be mv, and we can actually just move all of the files into that, right? Okay, and it just says it can't move itself. Okay, that's totally fine. So it's going to ignore that directory, which is great. But we should end up in a situation where when we finish this, all of the files are moved. So can I open up a file folder somewhere? Yeah, so, okay, I wasn't quick enough to, because there's very few files on this VM, but basically all of the files have already moved in there. I would have seen them start moving one at a time had I been a little bit quicker. But basically we've achieved what we needed. So now what do we do? Okay, so it's the same as before. And just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that, just had a message come in. Okay, so basically what did I say I wanted to do? Okay, so at this point, I still need to edit my Fstab. I wrote that down sort of so I don't forget this time around, and I need to create my home subvolume still. So let me do that really quick, and then I'll show you that we actually have a lot of issues here to resolve as a result of this move. So let's do this. Okay, so we've got our at home, and then we want to move at home star to at home. Okay, and cd at home. Okay, so we've got that. And then we've got to remove and I think it was just at home, right? Okay, so we're going to remove home. So essentially this is the same as before, where we had to move that old directory. There was an at home, or just a home directory in here, which we had moved the files out into here, and we just want to make sure that we tidy up basically after ourselves. So everything is now neat and tidy. But we still have a big problem here. And if we open disks again, I just want it to refresh. I'm not sure if it does it on the fly. But if we take a look at our disk here, this is the same. So this is good. This will match what's in our Fstab. But this and this is not going to. We're going to have a major issue at this point. This is going to be tricky for us to resolve easily. Let's put it that way. So what do we need to do to resolve that? Okay. We need to look at our Fstab. And it's going to be, sorry, at. So let's fix this. First thing we see here is this line here, and this line is totally wrong. So let's compare it to what we have on our disks. So is our roots file system got the same UUID 37? No, it definitely doesn't, and we knew that was going to be the case. So we definitely need to edit this and paste that in. So we're going to fix that. And then what else do we have to fix? Okay, so we need to resolve that, and we need to then take a look. This is also wrong. Okay, so this is also going to need changing. We need to change that to the BTRFS, and we also now need to pass the correct mount options. And I'm just going to copy this from my working directory here, working system. And you can obviously put in whatever you think is appropriate. This is what I think is appropriate, and I'm going to put that in here, which we have done. Okay, great. So we have our mount options, and I'm not going to forget this time around to obviously manipulate also the home, and that's going to go like that. So now we have that fixed and this fixed. So we have our home and our root. And what else do we need to do? This is correct, I believe. Let's double check. So that was 29B1. 29, yeah. So that one's good. This one doesn't need to change. And then we have our swap. Our swap's definitely going to be wrong. And I can see already it is. So this we need to fix up. And that's going to change over here. Okay, so quite a number of changes to make in the Fstab. Really, 1-2 lines up here need fixing, and the swap location as well. So we've done that now, so this is excellent, and we can save that. But we still have a big problem here because, and I want to show you two different things that could happen. The first thing is we need to edit the grub by hand again. And then I'm also going to show you what would happen if we did not edit grub by hand and we ended up in a situation where our system just didn't boot at all. So let's do both these situations. And this is going to be at boot, and it was grub, right? Okay, so here's the first one. We remember to do this nicely. And you shouldn't really edit this file again by hand, but we are going to be super careful and pretend we know what we're doing. And we're going to go to our first menu entry, and we're going to fix our submenu section here. So let's see, what does it say in this menu entry? Okay, so basically the first thing we notice is that it's going to basically say nothing to do with our subvolumes at all. Okay, so that's not good, so we need to add that in. So it'll be something like that, and then we need to add that in here. And then we see that this is also wrong here, where it says UURD, right? And actually I noticed there's actually quite a bit wrong actually. So I'm actually just going to look at my one, because I want to have a working one to look at. So this would be boot. I'm just going to edit it in Notepad as well. Okay. So I noticed there's something missing actually from this altogether. So I just want to have a look at how mine looks. Yeah, see, so it doesn't have the subvolume here. Okay, so we need to do something similar. We need to make this similar to that, basically. So what do I have? I have at boot and then your kernel. Perfect. And then root, your UURD, which is incorrect in this case, so let's fix that up. And so that's going to be this one. So we're going to put that in there, and obviously yours will be totally different. You need to put in the appropriate information. And then we have RO and then space, I think, RO space root flags equals, okay. So let's make that, just want to make sure that that's just a space, yeah. So RO space root flags equals subvolume equals at, okay. So let's get to the same thing here. So it was root flags equals subvol equals at. Okay, so these are the kind of changes we're having to make. And then here, the rest of this is all just custom for me. So quiet is totally fine. And then I believe that would be what you would edit by hand. Okay, so but I want to definitely put us in a position where this we've forgotten to do this. So I'm going to show you sort of both scenarios where we can't boot the system, and then what do we do. So at this point, let's close all that, and I'm just going to just have a look at my notes. Yeah, this looks pretty good. So let's reboot at this stage and see where we get to. So firstly, I'm going to obviously try the edited menu and then see if that boots, and then we'll pretend like we hadn't done that, and we'll have a completely broken system and not know what to do, basically. So cd-rom, let's check that out. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, so I didn't like that. Okay, so something has definitely gone wrong here. So I wonder what we've done. So this is interesting. So I did try to modify my file by hand, and I obviously didn't do it correctly because it still doesn't work. So it turns out that I'm editing it by hand. I'm not sure actually where I made a mistake. I thought I actually had compared this fairly carefully, but I guess I didn't. So what do we do in this situation? So let's take a look. So we're going to go, yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look and see how can we boot the system even if we have completely messed this up, which we have. And this is not unsalvageable. This is something we can do. We can definitely repair from here. So actually this is a good test to do. So let's take a look. So we want to first identify which is our disk with our files on, and I'm going to guess, I think it's this one here. So we're going to basically see if our files are in that directory. says it's BTRFS, so I guess it is, to be honest. And then we're going to go, we have an at subvolume. Yeah, so basically, okay, so we found our disk that has the files on that we need. It's here, so we've gone ls, we've identified the disk by guessing, but there's really only a few to get to double check if, and then we've gone and listed the files to try and find them, and we found them in here. Perfect. So this is pretty good. This gives us the information we need to actually boot this disk. So we're going to go set root equals, and then I've got the commands just typed out here because I would never remember this if I didn't write them down. So it's hd0 gpt2. So yours will obviously be different, and you're going to set this appropriately to whatever it is, basically. Okay, so that's the first command you're going to put in. You're going to set root to the disk. Then we're going to type in what we want to boot. Slash at. And I think you can use tab completion here, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, so we can use tab completion. We're going to boot that kernel. It's listed 2 to choose from. I don't know if I'm going to boot that one. Okay, and then we type root equals /dev/ well, we don't put the slash. Okay, so these are little things I need to write down so that I don't make a mistake. And then the disk, right? So it was dev/vda2, right? And we got that. Remember, I told you we needed to have that information for later on. And then root flags equals at. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So this is a very basic way to boot your sort of distribution if you have completely broken it and need to do this manually. And then we need to put an R in it, and that's going to be /at/. And again, we're going to be able to use tab completion, and it's going to be 13. Okay, and that's all we need on that line. And then we just type boot, and hopefully, if things go according to plan, this should hopefully boot at this stage. So we will find out now. Okay, this did not work. No file system could mount root. Okay, so I'm going to have to boot back into the live CD and understand what has gone wrong here. So again, it's not panic because remember, everything should be fixable. So we should be able to boot back into our live CD and then try to understand what's gone wrong. It could be that some of my mount options it doesn't like. So we're going to go and check that. So let's force off, and then I'm going to boot back with the live CD and take a look. So I will pause here and then get booted back in and come back once that's done. Okay, so I've just booted into my live CD again, and I'm now ready to troubleshoot. So I actually really don't know what I've done wrong, so we're going to have to be a little methodical here. And so this is good to see, also to understand, like if you ever end up in this situation, what do you do? Instead of throwing everything away and sort of starting all over again, let's try to fix this, right? So let me take a look first of all at my Fstab. And I'm just going to review sort of what I've done here. I need to mount the correct disk. So let's have a look at my disks here, and okay, let's play that. So I really want to review what I've done and try to understand what has gone wrong, basically. And we should be able to work it out. So this isn't a disaster. So we're going to go to add, and we're going to find our Fstab. Fstab. Okay, let's take a look. So what did we do wrong here? First of all, let's have a look. Did I copy this information out correctly? So we're going to double check that. And we're going to check that from the disks utility, aren't we? Which is here. So F49. Yeah, ending in 85. Yeah, so that's definitely correct. And the swap file is where was it? A24 ending in 0D. A24 ending in 0D. Yeah, so I definitely copied that correctly. So this is not looking bad, but I do think that we were fairly aggressive in and I basically did what I said we shouldn't do the first time around, which is put in so many of these sort of mount points, mount options, which I don't agree you should really do all in one go, because it can definitely cause issues if things are not as they should be. And so I'm going to just take these out and have sort of a much simpler sort of set of mount options. So that's the first thing I'm going to change. And I'm just reviewing this to make sure this looks logical to me, that I haven't made any sort of obvious glaring errors. Definitely looks fine. That looks okay. So the next thing I want to do is take a look at my subvolumes. And that looks pretty good too. And the other thing I want to do is edit that grub file again. And I want to have a look here and see if I didn't do anything kind of strange in here as well. So I still have this one open to compare to, so I have a working system essentially that I'm looking at. So the first thing I did was I didn't change any of that stuff. I changed it all in here. So I changed this. So I've got my, this section is where I'm looking. So let's just bring that up a bit and compare these sort of side by side and see what I think. So I've got Linux at boot and then my kernel root and then my UUID. Root equals UUID equals, yeah, and then that UUID which I copied, RO root flags equals. So this still looks pretty good to me. And then this is a little different, but that's just expected. And then this is the same. So this is interesting. It looks good to me. So it's not clear to me what's wrong. So what I might do is I might fiddle around a little bit to try and figure out what's wrong, and just put you guys on pause just to so I have a little bit of time to troubleshoot and see what could have gone wrong, and see if I can work it out basically, because in my opinion this should have actually worked, and yet it doesn't. So I'm going to pause you. I'm going to do a little bit of fiddling, and then when I find the answer I'll come back to you when I've figured it out basically. And you know what, I've actually already thought of what the problem could be after just a few moments of putting you immediately on pause. Yeah, this is interesting. So I know what I've done. I've forgotten another step basically, and that's to edit my EFI partition basically. So let's reset here. So I actually remembered to do this in the first one of these, and now I've forgotten to come and do this in the sort of the second machine. So this is again excellent that I've made this mistake, because you can see in real time sort of what do you do if things go completely south, and just taking sort of a short pause and thinking about it, you can come to the solution basically if you just think like, what did you do? What steps were we supposed to? What is actually happening here? What is the system trying to do? And it's not even finding grub at all. And so that indicates to me, when I think about it, that the EFI is loading, and then it's not actually locating grub after that. It's not finding where to go. Just hold on 1 second. Okay, so basically, why would that happen? And that's because we've forgotten to edit a file here. And again, remember, Linux is just files, hey? So at any time something is not working, like I really want to stress to you guys, you just have to edit files in order to fix stuff. And so if you can edit a file, you can fix anything. And you can see, I mean, I'm not like an expert at all. I don't, I make all of these kind of mistakes because I don't do this operation every day. And so you don't need to feel bad, right? You can just take your time, think about it, think, hey, what can I do? And you'll come to the answer if you just give it enough time and enough thought. And you'll see exactly here what I've forgotten to do, and it'll make perfect sense if you haven't seen this already. So let's have a look. It makes perfect sense to me. I was basically not telling the system where to read this this file, right? So let's have a look. Grub.cfg. And what is the system trying to do when it first boots? Okay, so it reads this file, and then it says, where do I go to boot this file? Or what do I do now? What is this file saying? And it's saying, go read this file here, and the file that you're going to read is grub.config. Okay, but we know that that file is not there, because we created a subvolume like this, and then didn't update this file to tell it how to access the correct menu. So essentially, if I do that, and I'm going to double check my work here, and that's also, by the way, why I could not boot correctly once I was trying to edit stuff. So let's take a look here. If I cat this boot, and it's EFI. No, how do I access this on my system? EFI Debian. Okay, so let me have a look on my system. So I just want to have a look here. So disks. So I'm just going to take a look on my system where this is. Okay, /boot /EFI. So I just want to go. Okay. So this is really interesting because basically /boot. Why am I not able to /boot EFI? And then what's under here? Let's just list what's in there because I can't remember the path. /EFI. I'm gonna have to list it again. Debian. Okay. Okay, and there's my thing that I want to edit. So so I just want to look at this and just make sure I'm not making a mistake. So this is super interesting. Yeah, so if I compare that to what I've got in here, okay, interesting. So this, first of all, is going to be totally wrong. And then secondly, is that right? So did I make this edit correctly at least? Yes, I did. Okay, so all I need to do is update this file to say the correct disk 3.7. Okay, well that was similar. Okay, so let's do that. And we know that this is going to be reading the files of this partition. And so this is the UUID that I'm going to be copying. That should make sense to you, hopefully. And we're going to paste that in. So yeah, so this is reading a file off your root partition in order to load the grub menu. So let's see what happens now, basically, when we restart. And I think this will resolve that. So we're going to restart. Let's take a look. Let's take that out of the CD-ROM. And hit enter. So this is interesting and really good that this happened, actually, because it gives us an opportunity. Yeah, perfect. It gives us an opportunity to see and understand further what the system is trying to do, and give us further insight into how to resolve these kind of issues, right, which is what we want. Let's have a look and see if my edits now, so I'm back into this sort of menu. Let's see if my edits, I think I edited that one, are in there, and indeed they are. Okay, so we can basically, I think if I press enter on that, no such device. Okay, so it looks like I've forgotten to update that UUID. Okay, so that's fine. So here, if we press enter, I wonder what it will do. And there's another issue I wanted to show you how to resolve, where this will pause like this for a really long time. And I want to show you how to fix that. So I think this is actually booting, but it's getting that issue where it just pauses for like an exorbitant amount of time, and then throws an error and then boots. We're going to find that out now. So let's see if that is the case. And if we just patient, hopefully it will boot. Yeah, there's that error. Okay, interesting. So I want to show you what is happening here. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to pretend as though I hadn't done any edits to my Fstab at all. Sorry, to the grub menu, that grub menu at all. And we didn't have the UUID, and we actually had nothing working. We were back in the situation where it wasn't booting at all. So let's get back into that situation where we can't boot. And I want to show you these commands will work this time around. So we go into here. Okay, so I fiddled around with this top one, but let's imagine I hadn't, and we had left everything like this. Basically, all of this is wrong. We don't know what the UUID is anymore, so we can't even edit this by hand and put in sort of the appropriate options, because we don't even know what they are. And we try to boot it, and we're totally screwed. Basically, we have no idea what to do. So what do we do at this stage? So we hit escape, and we get to our grub like this. And then this should work, basically, once you're in this position where the disk at least is being accessed by grub correctly, and you can read the menu items. And we can then list the disks. And again, I'm just going to just have a look at my my disks and just make sure that I can. It was GPT-2. Okay, so again, you just have to guess, and obviously I know my partition layout at 3 partitions, the boot, the sort of root partition in my swap file, and so by just having a little bit of information, there you go, we got that information, which is our UUID, and we know our BTRFS, and we can also go at like that, and just list our files in here, and see that, yes, indeed, this is our root partition. So then to boot it up from grub, when you have no working grub, we can do this basically, which is set root equals these commands. Basically, you just have to have written down or pull them from the internet. And then I'm obviously manipulating the disk that I found from the previous commands. So it's going to be GPT-2 like that. So I'm just going to make sure I don't make any errors this time. So we're going to go like that. And then go /at, because that's what we found here, basically. And what kernel do we want? The 13, or the later one generally would be the one that you want to boot. And then it's root equals dev/vda2, that was just that information we had from the, that we took note of before. And then what do we do? Okay, that does not have a trailing slash. Root flags equals as add file like that, so we're good there. And then we just put in our init. And again, 13, right, in this case. Okay. So let's see, does this boot now? This should boot if I understand what is going on. Unknown block. So for some reason it doesn't boot. So this is confusing to me, because these commands are supposed to boot Linux at this stage. End kernel panic. I might just wait a short while and see if anything happens. In my opinion, this should really boot. No file system could mount root tried. So what I might do is I might pause because I want to be able to do this in a disaster situation. I want to understand why this is not working. So I might pause here, and then when I work out why this does not boot, come back to you. And I'm not sure if I just have my commands written down here incorrectly and I'm not typing them out perfectly, but I'm going to figure this out and then come back when I have an answer as to why I can't get out of this situation. And I feel like I should be able to. I should be able to get through this booting. So let me pause and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I actually just got this booted. So I think I must have just made it an issue. I didn't read my commands very well. I think I put, setting the initrd, I think I put VM liners again instead of the init image. So I think that was just a mistake on my part. And so for sure this should have booted, and indeed had I typed the commands correctly it would have. So this is booting now, yeah. So let me show you basically, I'll do it again. It's basically just if you don't pay attention and get these commands perfect, the things don't work basically is the answer. And I didn't do that, and so it didn't work. So let's press escape and I'll show you again. And so and this time I won't make the mistake that I made before and type the commands incorrectly. So hd0 gpt2 okay, and we get that. So we find our disk and we check the files on it. Okay, and now we have everything we need to know to boot the system. And this time I'm going to type the commands correctly. And so this is why we do this, right? So again, like, the fact that I'm making mistakes is you never need to feel bad about that kind of thing. And I certainly don't. I mean, there's so much to learn, right? And this is why we practice and make sure we know, so that if we confront this sort of in the real world, we have a good understanding of what is happening and how to get out of the situation and fix what's going on, basically. And so that's the goal here, is that you end up with a situation where you know kind of the commands you need to put in. You may not know them off by heart, but you know what to look for, and you're in a position to figure out, based on the information that you're getting back from commands, what to type in on each of these lines. And that's what we want, basically. And then it was VM. Okay, and we're going to choose the 13 kernel again. And then it was root equals dev/bda2. In my case, yours will be slightly different. Equals subvol. Okay, so this command I think I've typed correctly this time around. And this is where I made a mistake last time. From just basically typing too quickly. And overlooking what I was supposed to type, basically. Okay, so, and now, okay, so I've typed in the command correctly this time, so initrd, okay, so that's what I did wrong last time, and then we're going to boot, and this should boot now, so, indeed it does, okay, so perfect. So either way, either we can go back into the live CD like you saw, and we can edit the menu of grub by hand, and we can put the appropriate edits in and get it to boot that way, or we can do it via the busybox shell when we sort of escape from grub, which isn't working, and we can boot it this way. So we have basically more than one way to get into the system, to bring the system back up. And that's excellent because, in your toolkit, you definitely want to have multiple ways to achieve a desired outcome. Because you never know when something you may end up with some edge case and something doesn't work, and now we have more than one method to tackle a problem, right? So what do we want to do now? We want to update grub and get grub to sort of sort out all of our stuff for us. So let's do that for right now. And so the command was, I wrote it down here, I think you can actually run update -grub2, I think, as well. But we're just going to do it by hand. It really doesn't matter. -grub. And put in that. Is that going to work? And then we'll just double check that that has sort of done it correctly. So we can always check what it has done, so we can make sure, sort of give it a sanity check, just make sure that are we happy with what it came up with, and we see that that looks pretty good, that looks pretty good, it's found the correct UUID, that looks good, it's done all the different entries exactly correct as we would want it. So you just give it a quick sanity check. At this point we should actually be able to just reboot now and everything basically works. So there's an interesting problem that we had, and definitely there are multiple ways to resolve it. We get the nice sort of graphical and sort of boot, and everything is back to working perfectly, essentially. So this is great. And here we have that long pause, which I want to show you how to fix now. And that's because we changed the swap partition. It got a new UUID. And there's actually something else actually that the Debian wiki forgot about. And I'll show you that now as well, because basically in their guide, if I bring this over, where they basically are saying BTRF migration, they leave out a step here, which is it's not critical, but it's something, you know, for completeness. We like to have a very neat system and everything working perfectly. And I'll actually show you that that there is a difference between one that was installed with BTRFS and then one that was converted afterwards, and the step is missing from this one, but it's automatically done here through the installer on this one. So it's going to be just an interesting difference that you can pick up. So I'll show you that now. We'll come to that just now, but we're going to get into this the system. As you can see, it's booting perfectly, and there's one other thing I want to do is I want to put my mount options back, basically, and just because I had removed them, I think, when troubleshooting the FS table, and we didn't need to, basically. So let me just take a look, and then give me 1 second here. I'll just be back in a moment. Okay, so I just went and got obviously the options that I wanted to mount with, which is this here. So I'm just going to put those in. Okay, and this here. Okay, perfect. So, and then I'm just going to save this, and again, really you should only do this, to be totally honest with you, at the end, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you have done too many edits on sort of that sort of side of things, and then it doesn't boot, basically. So it just makes troubleshooting really tricky when you're sort of having to undo multiple steps, and you know, I'd put myself in that situation just in this demonstration, and it's definitely not best practice. So, you know, try to be sort of more methodical in when you sort of make changes to your system, especially changes that could render it unbootable. Just so that it's a little bit easier to sort of undo what, you know, sort of the changes you made, and that sort of thing. And then I just want to fix this slow boot up here, and I'll show you what that is. It's a pretty basic command that we need to put in, or in a file to edit. So we're going to go do that. And it's to do with the suspend and /resume option, basically. So let's take a look here. And we're going to edit that file. I didn't get it just because it's a little bit easier for you guys to read rather than nano. And the file I want to edit is, I wrote it down here. Okay, so it's this one here, init. Okay, and then conf d, and it was resume. Okay, so this file here I want to edit. And you can see the resume UUID, which is the swap file, is the old UUID. And then this is great because this is going to show us actually another problem here, and I want to show you that. So the first thing we're going to do is correct the UUID to the new one of the swap partition and paste that in. And we have to save that and then run an update. And that update was, where did I write it down? Okay, so let's have a look. Okay. Okay, so it's this command here. And then dash U. And you're going to see there's going to be an error generated here. And that's going to be interesting because it's something overlooked by the Debian wiki. And so let's see the error that we get. I've actually done this before, which is how I know this. Check this out. It's saying that something's missing here. And that's to do with BTRFS, which we've just migrated to. That's weird, right? But let's take a look at the other system that we have, which is this one here, which had BTRFS sort of installed out of the box. And we're going to find a difference between these two systems. So things are not 100% perfect. They're not 100% clean at this stage, even though it appears that everything was working. And so let's take a look. So on this system, we're going to try and install, and we're going to see it's already installed BTRFS -progs, I think it is, this application here, this or this set of utilities. And look at that, this is already installed on this system. And actually, if we were to type this command, take a look at this. It actually has this command in the system because it's part of this package. So that's a difference here that's not been accounted for actually in the conversion step. Because look, if we try to do the same thing here, it actually has told us actually there's a problem here. If we were to try and run that command, actually the command doesn't exist on the system. So this is not good and should definitely be corrected. Again, this is a kind of problem that wouldn't cause you an immediate concern or any sort of immediate issue. This is a kind of problem that would cause an issue in the event that something happened and the disk was no longer consistent, and then it could not resolve that issue on its own. So we want to basically do some preventative maintenance here and sort this out ahead of time. And we're going to install that. And it's going to be BTRFS-progs. And I'm going to type that correctly, not incorrectly. So this is super interesting, just a little thing that we found here. In the conversion of the file system, this is not automatically done for you. And it's overlooked in some cases, basically. And in fact, it's running that command again, actually. I need to run that. And if we run this command again up here, we'll note that we don't get an error this time around, because now that does exist, basically. So let's have a look. Should basically pass without any issues. It does. And also we can actually run that command now. And we don't get an error saying that this is no longer installed. So this is really good, to be honest. And I think we've basically completed everything. So let's restart now and check that the system restarts quickly and doesn't get stuck at that one position. So let's take a look. So we've got our menu back to normal. We can hit return here. And is it going to boot quickly? Hopefully. Yeah, it does. Okay. So basically we have resolved all of the little kind of issues that have kind of cropped up. And to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing outstanding and everything is super neat. So if we log in and take a look, we should be able to run Timeshift now, which I might have to install. But if I just have a look at my subvolumes, I just want to just take a look just to check they look nice and clean, which they do. They look absolutely perfect. And then we're going to install Timeshift. let's do that. And then we're going to run Timeshift after that. We just want to run Timeshift, don't we? Okay, so now let's take a look. Does this allow us to complete the setup? It should do, really. Okay, so we've got daily, fine. We're going to include home, and we're going to finish. Let's try create one. Looks like it worked. Okay, perfect. And can we browse our snapshot? We can. We have both of our subvolumes, so we could restore files from here, or we could restore files from here, or if we mess our whole system up, we can't fix it, we can revert. So things are actually looking pretty good here, and if we were to go restore, we can either restore our home along with the snapshot or not. So really everything is working exactly as we want. We've managed to start with a system that was completely out of compliance for what we needed, and bring it into compliance, and pretty much achieve all of that without having to sort of reinstall anything. And it's pretty much identical, because all at the end of the day, don't forget, we're just editing files, right? So this system should be pretty much identical to a system that was installed correctly from scratch, from the beginning. We've done all of the relevant edits. We've put on all the little bits that were missing, updated everything here and there. And yeah, basically this would work as if it was a fresh install, but done correctly now. And that's sort of what we want to be. We want to be in a position where we can be fixing stuff when things go wrong without having to resort to, essentially reinstalling an entire system. We want to be able to correct the errors and have it basically back up and running in just as quick amount of time, basically, or probably quicker, because reinstalling, if you had to copy all your stuff back and reinstall a whole lot of programs, would probably take longer, to be honest. So I think that's everything. I'm just going to double check my notes. I think I've pretty much done everything that we wanted to do. Yeah, and that would be how I would tackle that problem, basically. So if I was tackling this issue of converting my system, those would be the sort of steps that I would follow. And you've seen where I've sort of got stuck, and we have had to fix things. You should basically have all of the knowledge to achieve the same sort of thing, even in a system that's not identical, and might even have some other issues that need resolving, basically. So yeah, hopefully that helps you, and yeah, just leave it there.